Yeah, I can go to the same people that say do it the same way and the same way. I don't want to do the same way. I can still have kids not acquiring English and they're still not writing a sentence in proper English by the time they're a senior in high school too. And the things can go on their merry way, just the way it is. And my job is to fix this and get this place out of the ditch.
Thank you, Mr. Paula.
New Britain will soon get an early look at whether its attendance and reading policies are making a difference. Results from the latest state test will be released this July.
And finally tonight, a milestone in the life of former South African leader Nelson Mandela. He turned 95 today. We go again to Kwame for the story.
Happy birthday, Tata. Happy birthday, Tata.
School children joined the chorus of South Africans in celebrations of Mandela's long life.
Happy birthday, Dr. Nelson Mandela. We all praying for you to get better soon.
Across the country, people marked the occasion by volunteering 67 minutes to charitable work. That's 1 minute for each of the years Mandela spent fighting apartheid and then serving as the nation's first black president. The current president, Jacob Zuma, welcomed families into newly built low-income housing outside Pretoria, and he spoke of the man known to all by his tribal name.
What is being done by everybody today to take some time, do something for people in honor of Madiba. That's why we came today, to do our own here.
Elsewhere, hundreds flooded into a Johannesburg convention center to pack meals for the poor.
It is important for me because it's like doing something which like for example, I sleep every day with them and there are some people outside who don't have anything to eat. So for me it's like, wow, something that I do for somebody who doesn't have anything.
Happy birthday, Madiba.
And in Cape Town, Archbishop Desmond Tutu helped paint walls in a local orphanage.
And today people are thinking about Madiba because it is International Madiba Day, and he makes us walk tall as South Africans and reminds us that we have the capacity to be this fantastic nation.
Tributes also poured in from around the globe.
I would like to express firstly my admiration about the great man, Nelson Mandela.
Leading figures, including the Dalai Lama and former President Bill Clinton, spoke in a Nelson Mandela Center of Memory video.
We have all equally been awed by his dedication to others and by his inspiration to serve as he did, working to build a more just and peaceful world.
Leaders of the U.S. House also weighed in, praising the legacy of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate.
Scarcely a week, a day, goes by without us pointing to Mandela as an example. An example of standing on principle, of loving your neighbor, and of extending the reach of freedom.
He had the courage to turn not to hatred, but to love, not to vengeance, but to compassion, not to resentment, but to reconciliation.
The patriarch himself remained in a Pretoria heart clinic where he was admitted June 8th with a recurring lung infection. There have been conflicting reports about his condition, but today hospital visitors generally gave upbeat reports. Mandela's daughter said he's making remarkable progress.
Over the past 3 weeks or so, I've just seen like a huge turnaround. Of course, like I'm not a medical doctor, they're the ones who will decide or determine when he goes back home, but I'm confident it will be sometime soon.
One grandson was more cautious, saying Mandela is still critical, but a lot more alert.
There's more about Nelson Mandela online. We look at how he survived his years in jail while fighting for democracy. Plus, we have a slideshow of images documenting his time in prison and the struggle for equality.
Again, the major developments of the day. President Obama pushed back against Republican criticism of his health care reform law, insisting that it's working and cutting costs for consumers. Detroit became the largest American city ever to file for bankruptcy. The emergency financial manager called it the first step toward restoring the city. And a bipartisan Senate group announced a compromise deal on student loans, tying interest rates to financial markets. It is the latest attempt to rescind a doubling of interest rates on federally subsidized Stafford loans.
And another NewsHour story online. On Making Sense, economics correspondent Paul Solomon reacts to a viewer's comment about the American dream in the face of today's economic reality. All that and more is on our website, newshour.pbs.org. And that's the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeffrey Brown.
And I'm Judy Woodruff. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening with Mark Shields and David Brooks, among others. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by BNSF Railway.
The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, working to solve social and environmental problems at home and around the world.
And with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
KQED thanks our members and community partners for their support.
call the July 18th meeting of the Capitola Planning Commission to order. May I have the roll, please, Danielle? Linda?
Commissioner Welch?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Here.
And Chairperson Youth.
Here. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, tonight's meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8, and it's being recorded to be replayed at 12 noon on the Saturday following the meeting. And it's rebroadcast on Community Television of Santa Cruz, Channel 71, and Comcast Channel 25. You can also view the meetings on the city's website at www.cityofcapitola.org. And our technician tonight is Victor Herman. And as a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. And if you do come up to speak, please sign your name on the sign-in sheet at the podium for the record. Okay? Thank you. Okay, oral communications. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda, Rich?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 5C, the Escalona Tree Permit project, should be removed from the agenda under advice from the city attorney. This is a decision that should be issued by the Community Development Department and would be appealable to the Planning Commission.
Okay. So that item 5C, 701 Escalona Drive will be removed from the agenda and handled by staff. Okay. Public comments. Ron?
Need a motion to remove it?
I don't believe so. I think it's just going to be a staff action.
Well, I understand that, but
well, just make a motion.
For the audience purpose, if somebody had come to speak to it, they should have that opportunity. That's the reason I held off making a motion to remove it, but I'd be happy to make a motion to remove it.
Okay, try a motion.
I'll move we remove 5C then.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to public comments. These are for short communications from the public concerning matters that are not on the agenda. And all speakers are requested to print their names on the sign-in sheet located at the podium so their name could be reflected in the minutes. Is there anyone wishing to speak to any item that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing no one, then we'll close the public comments. Commission comments. Anyone have any particular comments? Ron?
I have one. Called attention to the staff, the new endeavor on the corner of Bay and Capitola Avenue called Bacon's. I've received not emails but personal comments with regards to how nice it looks and the inaccuracy of the sign that denotes it as a restaurant. The original Grady's Market had, of course, a deli that was approved by this body and the city. Nowhere has an application come through for a restaurant because it would require some kind of additional parking, as noted by the permit parking in the immediate neighborhood across the street when the Rosenstein, I believe it is, development occurred there. I'm concerned, because of the amount of comments that I've got, that either we do not have the teeth in our sign ordinance or we do not have enforcement to really handle this. If you note, I don't remember whether it was yesterday's or today's paper carried a little article about the new Bacon's, and it referred to it as a grill, which is, synonymous to me with a restaurant type of thing if you got a grill. But if it's a deli, that's one thing. I would like to see a report back from the city attorneys and from the planning staff as to what we can do with the inaccuracy of the signage relative to the restaurant sign only.
Okay. Any comments? Seeing none? Got that, Rich?
Mr. Chairman, if the Commission desires, we can certainly bring a report back to the Commission and give you a status and an interpretation of the code along with an interpretation from the city attorney.
The only question I would have, Ron, is that I know in the past when we've discussed signage and in light of court decisions, people are allowed to put whatever verbiage they want on their signs. So he can call it anything he wants, I believe.
That, as you recall, I agree with what you just said, but the previous interim community development director sent us the state guidelines with regards to that. And this is not an issue of whether they're advertising a specific product that they sell in the store. They're advertising a business as something that it is not, when it's not a restaurant and not allowed. And so that's where I'm coming from. I think it's a beautiful addition to the corner. I think I wish them well. I just think that so many of the public, and most of the public, was up where one of our fellow commissioners lives, were wondering how they got a restaurant in there without the parking. And staff did research it for me. There has been no change inside to the building with regards to anything other than a deli and market. So I think the real point here is, false advertisement at its best.
Okay.
Well, certainly if there's nothing we can do about it, his customers are going to tell him about it. Customers aren't going to like that, so.
I just like it researched because I think, why have a sign ordinance if you can't do anything about something that's obviously wrong?
Well, I think it would be interesting for us to know for the future as well, what in this particular situation, what can be done and what can't.
Okay, so is there concurrence? Then we'll have Rich report back. Thanks, Rich. Any other commission comments?
Well, I'm probably going to beat staff, since we're here before the staff comments, but I would like to thank Danielle for all of her help and welcome Katie here. So,
Rich, you're going to introduce our newest addition?
I am, thanks. I am pleased to announce that Katie Catan is our new senior planner for the City of Capitola Community Development Department. Katie brings with her 12 years of experience in land use, environmental planning, and project management. Most recently, she worked as a senior planner for Park City, Utah, where she was responsible for performing design review, historic preservation. She processed a wide range of permits from single-family residences to large-scale specific plans and master plan developments. And she also worked on updates to the city zoning ordinance and general plan, which will be of particular interest to our department as we go through those endeavors. Prior to Park City, she worked with Clean Harbors Environmental Services in Salt Lake City. She gained some private sector experience while there and managed numerous federal contracts for a variety of projects and programs. Katie is an AICP, American Institute of Certified Planners, certified planner. She's a graduate from the University of Vermont with a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Studies with a focus on sustainable communities. So we're very pleased to have Katie, and just ask that you join me in welcoming her to Capitola.
Well, welcome, Katie. It's nice to have our community development staff up to full strength again.
Wonderful to be here.
Have some people that will be here, hopefully, for a long time.
And one other brief comment, Mr. Chairman. We did pass out some revised conditions for the surf and sand item that's on your agenda this evening. By and large, those condition changes were minor in nature, reflected the fact that they were not proposing any improvements or building of any units there.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Any other staff communications? Seeing none? Okay, that brings us to the approval of the minutes from the June 6th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second then to approve the minutes as submitted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the consent calendar. These are matters that are considered by the Planning Commission to be routine will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the Planning Commission votes on the action unless members of the public or the Planning Commission request specific items to be discussed for separate review. Items pulled for separate discussion will be considered in the order listed on the agenda. And I guess first we'll ask the public, are there any items on the consent calendar that would like to be pulled for discussion? If you do, you have to come up to the podium and let us know.
I already signed.
Pardon?
I did sign already. You want me to come up now?
Well, yeah, I'd like to know what you want.
That's a good idea. My name is John Mann. I live on Edmund Lane, and I've been here before when we were talking about 2040 Edmund Lane. First of all, I want to wish good luck to the two home builders, or the two homes to be built.
So right now, before we discuss the item, is this an item you would like polled for discussion?
Oh, I just want to make comments.
Okay.
Is that what I'm here for?
Well, no, because if we want to poll it for discussion, but I understand that Commissioner Smith is going to poll it for discussion?
Yes.
So let's do that. So you want to poll both of those?
Poll both of those
Okay.
items, yes.
Now we'll let you make your
right.
comments.
Okay, first of all, our particular cul-de-sac has looked at that area for quite some time. There was one house built, 2040. The other two we would like to see built because it would take away us having to look at the walls of the mall and take away the grassy areas that we were forever having to call to have mowed when they were overgrown. I'm surprised that the builders are trying to build something in this building environment, but nevertheless they seem to be optimistic about it. So I just have several comments I'd like to make. First of all, it's a very crowded cul-de-sac. I sent an email to the Madam Mayor with some photos, but you obviously don't have them. You do have them. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Isn't she a great lady?
I don't have any
Yeah, we
photos.
don't
No,
have
I'll wait until he's through and then I'll make comment.
Secondly, there are two families on that corner of the cul-de-sac with 5 children, one of whom is disadvantaged. They run around like crazy all the time, and I'm getting to a point there. Regarding the construction, I want to understand what's going to happen during the construction. I already understand there's going to be a lot of chaos with machines and things coming in there. But I want to make sure that that's done in a reasonable manner with the people who are now living there and with the children who are running around. There's no place for anybody to go except out on Dean's Lane when all the construction vehicles come in. I want to make sure that the street where they're going to be working is taken care of and repaved, or whatever needs to be done after they've brought in all the heavy vehicles. But one issue I think is really important is the water table and the hydraulic situation there. We haven't had much rain here in a long time, but a number of years ago when it rained quite often, that whole area was a lake. I did talk to some hydraulic engineers who were doing some testing, and they said indeed that there's a hard-baked clay about 2 feet below the surface. So I'd be interested in making sure that you understand that and that you talk to those construction people and make sure they understand that if wet weather comes along, what's the result of all that water coming up under the buildings that they're going to build. And lastly, for the homeowners, home builders, they can be sure that I'll be out there every day watching them, and I don't want to see any junk, garbage, or anything else around there, or I'll let them know personally, and I'll let you know personally. And once again, I wish them luck. We want to see that area with houses rather than that big old field. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Linda?
So the reason that I wanted to pull the 2 items was to add a condition, but do we need to approve the remaining consent calendar before we move forward?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I'm sorry. So we still have one other item on the consent calendar, which is 213 Monterey Avenue. This is a coastal permit, design permit to construct a mansard roof to shield some solar collectors on the roof. And it's in a multifamily residence in the CV Central Village zoning district. Requires a coastal permit. And is there an action by the council? Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second then to approve the application at 213 Monterey Avenue. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now, Linda.
Okay, Edmund Lane. The plans look good, the houses look good. It looked like there were no variances, so I didn't have a problem with it being on consent. But at our last meeting, we brought up a desire to start having a standard condition for screening of garbage containers. And when I look at the plans, I didn't see a fence or anything, so I'd just like to have that condition added that there needs to be an area that would conceal the garbage containers. If it's a fence and they put it by the side of the house, that's fine, but if we could just add that condition, then I would move to approve both items.
Okay. Ron?
Yes, I'd like to apologize to my fellow commissioners. I did receive an email from the mayor this afternoon. I didn't get it off my machine to 5 o'clock, so there wasn't ample time to do it, and to forward it to you would have been a violation of the Brown Act, so I did show it to the staff tonight, and it dealt with the gentleman that spoke from the audience's comments with regards to hydrology, the standing water on the 2 lots there, and I think he made his comments perfectly clear. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? We had a second to the motion. TJ, did you second the motion?
I second.
Do we have a second?
He seconded one, but I don't think it was
Okay,
necessary.
second that one.
I'll second.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second then to approve items 4B and 4C on the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the public hearings tonight. And we have 3 public hearings tonight, item 5A, 5B, and 5D. And public hearings are intended to provide an opportunity for the public to discuss each item. And the procedure is as follows. There's a staff presentation. There's public discussion. The Planning Commission comments. We close the public portion of the hearing. The Planning Commission discusses and hopefully arrives at a decision. So we'll start with item 5A, which is 1330 47th Avenue. This is a plan revision to a previously approved design permit for a new 2-story single-family dwelling in the R1 zoning district. Rich? Kate? Danielle?
Chairperson Ruth, the Planning Commission approved the design permit for a single-family dwelling at their March 7th, 2013 meeting. During the building permit plan review, staff determined that the exterior building elevations and material had been revised from the approved plan. The Planning Commission was informed of the change at their June 6 meeting and directed staff to bring it back for discussion. Staff identified discrepancies in the design description contained in the Planning Commission report and the design shown in the approved plans. The staff report specified, and I'm going to paraphrase, that the house proposed an attractive craftsman style with large entry porches, wood columns, vinyl windows, and second-story dormers. Although there is similar massing with this home next door that was built a few years ago, the new home utilizes different exterior materials incorporating a mix of stucco and board bat siding. The elevations presented in the Planning Commission staff report and the reduced plans in the staff report showed stucco on the first floor and wood shingle siding on the second floor. The colors and materials board presented in the same staff report conflict and show first floor stucco and the second floor with board and batten siding and narrow columns. The building permit plans submitted show stucco on the first floor and board and bat siding on the second floor. Staff determined during the building permit review that the application was consistent with the staff report description and the color and materials board and conditionally approved the building permit plans. And now recommends that the plans are consistent with what was previously approved and is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and would recommend approval of the building permit elevations. And that concludes my staff report.
Any questions for staff? I have one, Danielle, and it would be the view where we've got the 2 different contrasting colors, the one's blue and the one's gray. Which one are we approving, or are we approving any of those in terms of color?
I don't believe either one of those is the appropriate color board. I'm not sure which, because the home next door is not a dark blue. I believe it's actually a light tan in the field as we speak. So I'm not exactly sure what the final color board will be on the new home.
So do we know if the second-story bats are going to be painted a contrasting color, if the base color will be light with the bats a darker color?
No, I believe the whole upstairs area with the board and bats will be of the same color.
Okay.
They will not differentiate with stripes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I don't have any questions. I'll have a comment later.
Okay. Okay, we'll open this up to the public. This is a planned new single-family residence at the corner of 47th and Topaz. Anyone wishing to comment on this item? Come, step forward, please identify yourself for us.
Gary Lendeke, the applicant. Let's see, Danielle mentioned that the plan revision was prior to the Planning Commission. The plan revision was prior to the Arkansas Review Committee. And the first thing I noted at the Arkansas Review Committee, especially with Derek Van Alstyne as well as Ryan, was that we were making the change. There was a couple reasons for that. One, the house that we did next to this residence that we did approximately 5 years ago has the shingle on the upper story. We had made that change, and again, I made it a note walking into the meeting prior to any discussion, and showed them the plans that you reviewed on your board there. I also showed them 2 color boards, one of the dark blue of the entire house and then the lighter gray. And through discussions with both Derek Van Alstyne and my partners, we decided to do the entire house in the darker blue with the white trim. So I didn't think there was any question on that in that regard. What the Planning Commission hearing when we showed up was on the consent agenda, but I'd also brought 8x11s, just noting that there might need to be clarifications. But I'd never heard back from Ryan at all through the whole process that he would need additional plans brought to the board in order to clarify exactly what we're doing out here. I thought through his notes and staff report that was submitted to the Planning Commission that that was adequate, or he would have asked for something other than that. But again, the revision was made at the Arkansas level, and I believe Daniel had talked to Derek Van Alstyne and confirmed that as well. And if you have any other questions.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Any questions for Gary? None? Thank you.
That's it. Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one, then we'll close the public portion and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any comments? Discussion? Ron, you had some?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments. Truly apropos that the previous speaker mentioned that the plans that he submitted to Arkansas were not the ones that we got here at the Planning Commission level. At least that's my understanding of it. And this harkens back to when we got several set of plans for Villas of Capitola on 41st Avenue. So when this came up as a discussion item at our last Planning Commission meeting last month, I asked that this be brought back. My understanding tonight is that the plans that they're working from and what it will look like are basically Attachment D, is that correct?
Yes.
And Attachment D, how does it relate to Attachment B? Because that's what I remember seeing before.
Attachment B and Attachment D. Attachment B were the colors and materials board, which represents board and batt siding on the upper floor and stucco on the lower floor with narrow columns, as is the same with the building permit plans in Attachment D.
And I guess I want to make myself very clear here. I'm not talking about the columns. I see in the different attachments that there's different size windows in the different elevations, not just the difference between batt and a shingle on the second floor. And so I'm trying to get a real feel for how this all occurred, and I understand what the applicant said, and I just want to make sure what we get is the final thing. And I'm hearing from you that the final thing is going to be D, which is board and batt on the second floor, the elongated windows as opposed to what the very short windows on the west elevation in Plans B. So there's been major alterations to the end of it. How can, and I guess my question, I don't have any problem with all this, how can this be avoided in the future? Are there several sets of plans floating around before it goes to Arkansas and before it comes to us? Because that shouldn't happen.
Commissioner Graves, I would agree. I really don't know how it happened. Unfortunately, the staff that were here at that time are no longer with us. But clearly, there should be one set of plans in one description that gets through the approval process. and those plans are the ones that are cross-checked with building plans. That didn't happen, but clearly it'll be the department's expectation as well as yours as we move forward.
I'll make one final comment, Mr. Chair, and that is that, and this is very subjective, the attractiveness of the shingled second floor and the board and bat, to me, are like night and day, but that's just a personal opinion, and applicant can build what he wants, but from a community standard, I like the shingled second floor.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'd move approval of this item.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the application. Is there a second? We have a second by TJ. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to item B, 507 Plum Street and 712 Capitola Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Commissioner Ortiz has to recuse herself because she lives within the, or has proximity with, or property within the proximity of this application. So this is a design permit to construct a second dwelling unit above a two-car garage with a one-story single-family residence in the CN zoning district.
Yes.
Kate?
The application is at 507 Plum Street, and it's on a corner with, and shared on the property of 712 Capitola Avenue. It's a design permit for a residential commercial mixed development in the CN neighborhood commercial zoning district. There is an existing home on the property as well as an existing office building. They are proposing an addition of a two-car garage and on top of that a second dwelling unit. This is an aerial image of Capitola Avenue and Plum Street and the existing conditions. And you can see on the right-hand side is the 507 Plum Street. And this image is of the site plan with the area of the new addition sitting in front of the existing single-family home. To the left is the office building and parking lot on the corner. And these are images of the current single-family home, and the new addition will be behind the 6-foot fence. It's a with 2-foot lattice at the top. That is an existing fence. And this is an image of the existing office building and parking area in front. And the elevations show the new addition. All the proposed addition meets all setback requirements, height, parking requirements for the site. The applicant is requesting an exception to the requirement for undergrounding the existing overhead utility lines. In order for the Planning Commission has the ability to grant an exception as long as the Planning Commission can determine that a hardship exists, primarily for the environmental reasons and not financial hardship. Staff was unable to make that determination in the staff report. The connection is within 10 feet of the poles. So we are asking you to either make that finding tonight. The conditions of approval do not include an exception as requested. And that is the proposal. During the Arc and Site Review Committee, the landscape architect was asking about the 6-foot fence in the front and the side yard. Plum Street is considered the side yard of this project, and she suggested that it be softened, and she was wondering if they were going to remove the fence. The applicant would like to keep the fence and plant on the interior of the fence, and hopefully plants will grow through the lattice at the top to help soften that edge along Plum Street.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Were there any conditions staff discovered that would create an environmental hardship to underground the utilities?
We did not find any
Okay.
Conditions of hardship.
Okay. I think at this point in time it would be very difficult for the Planning Commission to find those also. Yeah. Okay. Any questions for staff?
I have one question, I guess, for staff. The new construction, when it's finished, will front on what street? What will be the front door? Where will the front door be?
There's several front doors because it's a mixed-use environment, so the existing front doors for the business will front onto...
I'm not talking about the
Oh.
business, because the addition
Okay, just
is
the
not
addition.
to the business.
Plum.
Plum will be the front. And there's an 8-foot fence in front on Plum Street
6
now?
foot. There's a 6 with a 2-foot lattice, so it's...
Yeah, 8 feet. Okay. One other question. Is there any relevance between this and an email I received also very late today, I apologize for this, from John Barasoni with regards to a Dennis Norton comment that this was not a second dwelling unit, but a standalone? Or is this for some other project, this email? Have you seen the email that
I have not seen the email.
Okay, I apologize for that. And we'll just let it go because it doesn't have any bearing on this, except that I'm not quite understanding why it came at this late hour. So I'll be glad to pass that on to staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Well, the only other question I have, staff, is if this is in fact a second additional unit, about the water meter requirement, and would we not put that in our conditions now?
We simply require that the applicant provide a will-serve letter, that they can get water service to the unit. You know, there's been lively discussion about the rates to hook up to second units into a meter. Unfortunately, that's something that the district decides. I think there is considerable concern about the cost and its financial effect on our city's ability to increase its housing stock with smaller units. But it's really outside of the city's control to, regulate whether or not they were required to get a new meter.
I hate to interrupt you. What you're dwelling upon is in this email from Mr. Barasoni, so I think I better pass it to you. And it's a comment, so maybe this email is relevant to this application. So if you'd pass that over to staff, I'd really appreciate it. I had no idea what project it was going with. I did respond back to Mr. Barasoni about previous comments with regard to the first part of the email, which had to do with the Fair Practices Code and the Ethics Code of the State of California, but that's not part of this discussion.
Okay, I think what we'll do, we'll open the public portion, and Rich, if you find anything in there relevant, you can interrupt us. And
I can comment that the remark in here that this unit would be required to get a second meter, I think that's accurate based on everything that we've heard from the district.
How does this relate to this being a second unit standalone? Because my understanding of this project was that this actual house came before us previously. We approved a garage at that time in the house, and now they're asking to put a second unit on the top of the garage that we approved. So and that letter seems to indicate it's a standalone second unit. I don't quite understand that one.
Well, it seems to be, kind of nomenclature. It's an additional residential unit that's going to be on the lot. The way the Capitola Municipal Code deals with secondary units, they are standalone. It's not a granny flat like some jurisdictions will restrict to only family members, maybe temporary occupancy. Anyone can reside in the second units, and they're basically an independent living quarters. So for all intents and purposes, I kind of think they're one and the same.
I don't think standalone means it's separate and distinct either. It's just, it means it's a separate unit. It'd still be attached.
Kitchen,
Yeah.
and so on, right?
Exactly.
And I ran the same problem when I was building. I was going to add a secondary unit in my yard, and actually the water meter is what prevented me from doing that. It's a substantial cost to do that. So.
Okay. Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll open the public portion for this particular item. 507 Plum Street, 712 Capitol Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? No. Seeing no one, then we'll close the public portion, bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Comments? Motions?
I could accept it without the exception for the request to hardship.
Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult to make that without any information.
Yeah.
My comment would be that I'm intending to not vote positive on the application simply because I believe that the fence on the frontage side is way too high in the front yard. We've never allowed it in other areas, and I think that what we're getting here is a remodel that's going to be remarkably nice, and that the front yard area ought to be opened up, and it makes for a better turning movement coming out of Plum Tree and the rest of it.
Well, you could try a motion with that condition attached.
Well,
I'm just feeling you out, folks.
I have a problem having them remove something that's been there, and it's already there, and making them remove it so that they can have the garage. I have an issue with that. Plum Street is an interesting street, and I'm sure for privacy, if I lived there, I'd probably want a tall fence myself. So I would humbly request that that condition not be added to the motion, but I would move approval for the item, including the not making the exception for the undergrounding.
So then we have a motion to approve without the exception, which would exempt them from undergrounding utilities. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ron, you had something to say?
No, my only comment is that when we approved it before, there wasn't a major discussion about the fence. I agree with Linda, but I'll be honest with you, I must have overlooked it at that time, so I apologize to you. The fence is, for a privacy standpoint, it's probably right, Linda, it's probably needed, but there could be something with a great deal more aesthetics than that wooden fence, and it's going to look as ugly as it does today, so I can't vote for the project.
Okay, so we have a motion then and a second to approve the project. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries on a 3-to-1 vote. Okay, that brings us to our last public hearing tonight, which is 750 47th Avenue. This is a coastal development permit and vesting tentative subdivision map for the conversion of Surf and Sand Mobile Home Park from a rental mobile home park to an ownership mobile home park in the MHE, which is the Mobile Home Exclusive Zoning District. Who's taking care of this one? Rich.
This will be Kim Shantz. He's our contract planner, and he'll be
Okay.
giving the presentation for this
Okay.
site.
Tim?
Good evening. The project before you is the conversion of an existing mobile home park on one parcel
If I could stop you for just a second. I have a hearing issue, and I can't hear him with that going on in the background. Can we fix that?
There could be a phone next to the microphone.
I apologize, but it just overrides you, and I can't hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me begin again. And this project is a conversion of an existing rental mobile home park on one parcel to an owner-occupied mobile home park on various separate individual parcels. It requires a subdivision permit, and since it's in the California coastal zone, a coastal development permit. What we'll do is look at the site to begin with, and then look at the project, and then look at the regulations that cover the conversion of mobile homes such as this one. So the site, as you see in the slide there, is located on Jewel Box Hill. To the left is 47th Avenue and Jade Street Park, and to the right is 49th Avenue. At the bottom of the slide, that's to the south, is the railroad, now owned by the County Transportation Commission, which parallels Portola Drive and Cliff Drive. And these features are shown here. We have the open space of Jade Street Park directly across from Surf and Sand Mobile Home Park. And then the bottom slides show 49th Avenue, which is primarily detached single-family dwellings. Now, the project itself would subdivide one existing lot into 74 individually owned lots and 4 common area lots. Each mobile home space would become privately owned. The common areas would be 4 lots. We'll look at those in a minute, but they would all be owned in common. And the project would, of course, need a homeowners association to manage those 4 common lots. The lot lines would be based on the existing delineation of the mobile home spaces today. There is no new construction proposed for this project, no new utilities, no new roadways or buildings. So looking at the individual lots, the private lots would be, again, the same shape as the current mobile home spaces, and you can see an example there. They'll range in size from just over 1,500 square feet to almost twice that, 2,954 square feet. And the upper image does show you one of the smaller lots. The outdoor open space is pretty much confined to the carport area. And then the lower image shows you the larger lot, which has backyard and lawn space. The common lots would be the existing commonly used areas that you have today. The clubhouse, which is in the upper right, also exists as a meeting room and a community laundry facility. It includes the parking area that you see in front. Below that is the common picnic area, and that would connect to one of the existing streets, and the existing streets interior streets would be the other common lots, and they of course would be privately owned and operated by the homeowners association that would be created as part of this project. In terms of the required approvals, it would require a subdivision approval to approve the vesting tentative subdivision map and a coastal development permit. Under the subdivision, the State Subdivision Map Act does have provisions that are related to the conversion of mobile home parks such as this, and case law has determined that only those type of regulations can really be applied to this type of a project, that your local zoning ordinances and your local subdivision regulations cannot apply. So your commission would need to look at how the project complies with State Subdivision Map Act law, not necessarily zoning, local zoning. But since the project is within the coastal zone, it also needs a coastal development permit. That also is required. And the California Coastal Act is implemented in Capitola by the Capitola Local Coastal Program, which has been certified by the Coastal Commission. And we have reviewed the project in light of the local coastal plan policies, and it does comply with all applicable policies. The last thing under coastal development permit that you see there is the Mello Act, and we'll talk about that, I think, in a future slide. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. But let's look at the Subdivision Map Act. The purpose of the provisions of the Subdivision Map Act that govern the conversion of mobile home parks to owner-occupied mobile home parks is to prevent the displacement of low and moderate income people, because what you have is typically a rental situation. They might own their coach, but they don't own the land underneath it. And when it becomes necessary to own the land underneath it, many times people of lower incomes get displaced. So the Subdivision Map Act addresses that by requiring the applicant to first prepare a report on the impact of such conversion, and then requiring that the applicant must offer the tenants the option to either purchase the land below their mobile homes or to continue renting. Also, there must be a survey done of the residents in the mobile home park for support or not support for the conversion. And the survey must be conducted according to an agreement between the applicant and the tenant organization. I have HOA there, but I really mean tenant organization of the park. And once the conversion occurs, there are limits on rent increases that can occur for those people who choose not to purchase their residence, the land underneath their residence. I will say that an impact report has been prepared. It is part of the staff report. It is attached, attachment D on page 109. It does include information to the tenants about the option to purchase or continue renting. There has been a survey that has been done, and the tally sheet of that survey is attachment F, beginning on page 125 of your report, and it does show that 42 spaces were issued the survey, were delivered the survey because they owned their mobile homes, and 29 of those responded, and of those 29, 24 support the conversion as proposed. So, as we move through, let's talk about the Coastal Act and the Mellow Act. Again, the Local Coastal Plan implements the Coastal Act here in California, and we have looked at the applicable policies, and the project before you does comply with those policies, and that's reflected in the findings that are in your staff report. The Mellow Act. The Mellow Act is really not part of the Coastal Act, but it provides for the retention of low and moderate income housing within the coastal zone, so there is a relationship there. The Mellow Act does require, typically, the replacement of low and moderate income housing when that housing is demolished or when that housing goes from rental to owner. However, there are some instances where the Mellow Act does not apply. And one of those is if a city jurisdiction has less than 50 acres of vacant, privately owned land that is available for residential use. Capitola is one of those jurisdictions in California where there is not an aggregate of 50 available acres that are vacant, available for residential use. Therefore, your commission can make the findings that the Mellow Act does not apply in this case, and those are the recommended findings that are in the staff report for you. The conditions of approval can basically, we have 7 conditions of approval. They can be summed up in these bullet points here. Naturally, it's a subdivision which needs to submit a final map, which is required, of course, by state law. That final map would go to the Public Works Department, which shows much more detail than the project plans that you have in Exhibit A. Also, we're requiring some form of a purchase rental option agreement to be submitted to the Community Development Department and the city attorney prior to approval of that final map. A homeowners association needs to be formed to manage the common lots, and that there will be no construction. Now, Mr. Grunow did mention that there were some changes to the conditions. Those were passed out to you this morning, but we can look at those in more detail in the following 3 slides. As you see, slide 2B
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes.
Just get a clarification what no construction means.
Oh, no construction means no building, no new utilities, no grading. So
About renovation of mobile homes.
you could do a renovation of a mobile home without this approval.
Okay.
Okay, so looking at the revised conditions, you see the yellow wording with strikeout would be removed. We are recommending removal of that. And so 2B would read, the locations of all utility easements. Next, condition 3 would be revised to remove the phrase and profiles of said improvements because there will be no construction. That was just an oversight. Number 5, this is yellow in bold is new wording, and orange with strikeouts is deleted wording. At least that orange is supposed to be struck out. And so basically, this is the condition that deals with the opportunity for residents to either purchase or continue as a tenant to rent. And this is the way that we have proposed to revise that in consultation with the applicant. And then lastly, we have 5A, limiting the rent increase of the non-purchasing low-income homeowners to not exceed increases in the consumer price index for the same period. This is one of the limitations for rent increases. And then B is the other limitation. Phasing any rent increases for non-purchasing homeowners who are not low income to market rate rents by phasing the increase in equal increments over a 4-year period, and this is required by state law. And then last, condition number 6 is preparation of the final improvement plans shall proceed in compliance with all applicable state and federal laws, because there is no construction as part of this application. That ends the slides, and I'll end my presentation by saying that we recommend approval of this project based on the 2 sets of findings that are in your staff report, the subdivision findings and the coastal development findings, based on the 6 conditions as presented as revised here tonight. And that ends my staff presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions for the staff?
I have a question on your slides. You skipped over one of the changes, and I'm not quite sure I understood what it is, and it's 4C. I understand that you're just changing the capital M to a lowercase m. I understand that. The problem that I had with the whole sentence was that when you showed us the common areas, I can remember 3, not 4, so I assumed that one was the combination clubhouse laundry facility. The other must be the parking area that serves that building. The other being the what would you call it, the bench area, and the third one that you mentioned was the common streets. So I didn't get where the 4th one was.
Okay. Right there, there's another internal street, Lot A. Do you see that towards the top of the slide? That's one common area. Paralleling that is Lot B. That's the other common area. Below that is Lot D. And Lot D includes the perpendicular streets and the parking area. And then the 4th, I skipped over the 4th, that's Lot C. That's the clubhouse.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one question. There's 74 privately owned lots. 42 were included in the survey because they owned their homes. Who owns the other homes?
Most of the other homes, it's my understanding, are owned by Surf and Sand, and they have been renting those to tenants. Some of them are vacant and abandoned.
Any other ones? No. Any more questions? If not, is the applicant's representative here tonight? If you could tell us your name, please, and add any information you'd like to add.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Mark Alpert. It's good to be back in the city of Capitola under slightly more friendly circumstances. I think Kim said that their homes were abandoned. There aren't any abandoned homes. There may be homes that have been sold and are being refurbished and remodeled. There's no homes that are abandoned in the park. But the only other thing I wanted to do is, I know we went through years of hard-fought battles, and there are long-term leases that are in place with a lot of the existing residents that are low income. I just wanted to make sure you understood that those leases are honored. They're not going to be affected by the subdivision. If those folks want to continue to rent, they can do that. The only other item I would have is on the language. I think we just didn't get the language completely corrected on condition 6. I don't know if we can get that condition up. It says preparation of the final improvement plans. It really should be preparation of the final map as opposed to improvement plans, because there aren't any improvements to undertake. At least that's, I don't think there's any controversy over that change. With that, other than, unless you have any questions, that's all I have.
I just have one question. I think the answer is fairly obvious, but I just wanted to confirm this. In light of the fact that Mr. Reed owns a number of the homes and will be rentals, will he be required to participate in the homeowners association through dues on each one of those lots to fully subsidize the homeowners association?
Sure. If he continues to rent homes, he's a lot owner within the homeowners association, and for every lot that he owns, whether he's going to have to pay that share of the homeowners association.
I assume that was correct. I just wanted to make sure.
you pose an interesting question. Say that this all transpires and the homeowners association is formed, and like many of the individually owned parks that we have in the city where the homeowners own their space plus the common grounds together, what if they decided that, and I know there are CCRs within the city that have this, that there are no rentals? How would that affect your client?
Oh, if they decided, the homeowners association decided to adopt a rule against home rentals?
And let's say they adopted a set of CC&Rs for the operation of the park and the common areas, and one of those rules was, they have them now. Some of them are age restrictions, some of them are no rentals or rentals for 6 months, and after that time, that allows somebody that deceased to rent the property until they can find and dispose of it to a new client and stuff like that.
Well,
and I'm just saying, how does that affect your client?
Well, of course, the CC&Rs that are going to be governing this property will be prepared before the first lot is ever sold. They're one of the things, actually, that would be reviewed by the city, and they'd be reviewed by this Department of Real Estate. Now, the question you may have, it may be at some later date that they could possibly change it. I'm not going to. I actually have not addressed that question in the past. I wish I could tell you the answer to that. I really can't. I'm assuming that there would be a grandfathering for people who existing homes that were in place. That's my assumption, but I can't tell you the answer to that for sure.
Okay. Just know that many of the CC&Rs that went with the conversion of the trade winds, which was the first park that went to tenant-owned park, have changed over the years with each new set of board of directors, and so I was just kind of trying to feel out how this would affect your client in the future if a board of directors that he did not have control over were to indicate that they wanted to at some time cease to have rentals within the unit.
Well, speaking in practical terms, when you convert, you're trying to get out of the business of renting, and I would think that that what their plan would be, and they have control over it, to sell along with the individual lots to the homeowners, to sell the rental homes with their spaces together at the same time. I'm assuming that would be the plan, but of course you would have tenants in place that you may want to allow to stay over time. But I'm assuming that would be the logical way to handle it.
What does the law say about the makeup of the homeowners association?
Well, one membership per lot. There's a supermajority that gets created during sort of the formation years that you can have, so that while you're selling off the lots, the subdivider can still maintain control of the association. But generally, it's one vote per lot. I'm not sure if that's the question you're asking.
Well, I'm wondering, is the homeowners association established and run through a board of directors? Or is it like common democracy where everybody gets to participate and has a vote?
Well, this is all governed by state law, the Department of Real Estate, and it's like any other condo association. The members of the association elect the directors of the homeowners association who operate the homeowners association. So it's really the lot owners who run the association.
Okay. So in this case, with Mr. Reed owning a substantial number of lots, then would he have a lot of votes then to determine the outcome of the homeowners association decisions?
Well, sure. If he were to, for example, just sell a few lots and continue to own many lots, he would maintain management control because he'd have the most votes.
I just want to touch on the abandoned, or there are a lot of empty homes. Are all of those homes owned with the lot so that this action will actually help populate them again?
This action isn't directly going to affect that right now. What's happening is those homes are being remodeled and rented out at this point. That's the process they're going through. It's kind of at the same time the entire infrastructure of the park is being redone, electrical, gas, water, upgrades of the electrical system. So you can imagine there's a lot going on at this park. So it's just a time-consuming process to get every home up to speed and rented out.
So what you're really saying that the utilities and the common grounds and the common grounds streets and the rest of it will all be up to snuff before this actually takes place, so that no improvements would be going on after this time or during this time?
That's right. The plan is to have, well, in fact, a whole, basically a brand new infrastructure. And utilities, actually, I just learned this tonight from Ron, who's here. And by the way, our engineer is here, Robert DeWitt, for questions. They're going to be direct billing the utilities. So that means, that they're going to be turned over to the utility companies, who then be responsible for maintaining the infrastructure.
Any other questions?
I did have one question, and maybe more directed towards staff, and maybe it's naivety on my part, but when the city negotiated the final rent control process that went on a year or so ago, the city agreed to provide assistance for some individuals in their for a period of time in their mobile homes. Has that changed at any point in this process?
In so much as that through this agreement, the applicant has agreed to pick up the city subsidy obligations for a stipulated period of time, and that's an attachment to your staff report.
Okay. I must not have read it thoroughly enough, but thank you for pointing that out to me.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Albert.
All right. Thank you.
At this time, then, we will... another representative?
Our engineer, Robert DeWitt.
Okay. Mr. DeWitt.
Yeah, Robert DeWitt, civil engineer representing Mr. Reed. One other minor correction. It's been mentioned that there are 74 lots. If you look on the tentative map, sheet number 2, we're actually only showing 73 lots. And the reason is that somehow in the numbering of these units from 1 through 74, unit number 23 was completely missed. So there's only 73 lots in the subdivision, even though the numbering goes up to 74.
Okay, and the final map will reflect that, I presume.
It will, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Okay, we will open up the public portion then at this time. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this particular item? If so, you need to come to the podium, please, and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name's Valerie Tudor. I'm a full-time resident of the park. And I must admit, I haven't seen any upgrading of the utilities recently. I have seen some renovation in the homes, but I haven't seen any improvements to the paving of the streets, the utility lines, and maybe Mr. Reed's lawyer could tell us where that is happening, where those upgrades are happening. And my concern is, if I were to buy my land, would the utilities have been upgraded prior to my purchase? Or would the people who buy their plots of land be the ones responsible for paying for the upgrades?
According to what Mr. Albert just said, the utilities will be upgraded prior.
All right, that sounds good then. So then we need an assessment of how much these utilities are going to cost, when they will be done, and then we want a notice that all of the required upgrades have been done before we purchase our lots. I think that's only fair, because we don't want to go into a purchase where we don't know what the unknown additional costs are going to be.
Okay.
So I would like that clarified, that the utilities are upgraded and the new landowners will have no further cost to put towards these utilities upgraded.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Albert wants to answer your question right now.
Just a couple of things. I think it's a lengthy process getting the new infrastructure, and we're looking at a process of about a year. But as part of the DRE process that you would go through to get approval to offer lots, your white paper, you have to do an analysis of the condition of all the common area infrastructure, and a disclosure is given to each and every person who is interested in buying a lot, which has an analysis of the useful life, which has an estimate of what the HOA dues will be. So this project is going to get done, but beyond that, before anyone buys a lot, they're going to know what they're buying into. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let's come up to front, please.
My name's Ralph McCall, and I'm a friend of a tenant. And just a question again with the utilities. It's a privately owned system, I believe, right now that's billed by the owner. And I have a little familiarity because I work for a utility, and so far as the utilities are concerned, usually the utility won't take over an infrastructure unless it's up to current standards. So it seems to me that in order for that to happen, the entire the easements would have to be in place. The distribution system would have to be up to a certain standard, and from what I can see, it doesn't look like it would meet current standards for a utility. And I'd like to know how that would be addressed.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Last chance. Okay, seeing no one, then we'll close the public portion. Mr. Albert, would you like to address that question about the upgrading of the utilities, or Mr. DeWitt, to standards so the utility companies will actually take them over and assume responsibility?
Yes, I'm happy to answer the question. He's right. The existing utility plant is not up to the local standards for the utility companies. For example, the water mains in that park are, I believe, 2 and 3 inch lines, and minimum size for distribution system in Soquel Creek Water District is 6 inch. So new 6 inch mains will be put down the street. New meters will be added at each lot so that they can be separately metered. New underground gas and electric will be installed as well down the streets.
And those will be according to the standards of that utility company? So
That's correct, yeah. We're going through the process with PG&E right now to design all that and to make sure it meets their standards. So that's why it's going to take a year.
Okay. Hope that answers your question, sir. All right. So the public portion is now closed. We can bring it back to the council for discussion. Anyone care to lead off?
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion at all? Seeing none, I'll call for the question then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You have your subdivision well on its way. Okay, that brings us to item 6, which is the director's report. Rich, do we have a report tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick items. Just for the Commission's information, we did release a notice of preparation for the environmental impact report for the general plan on July 1st. So that's currently out for a 30-day public review period. We have a public scoping meeting scheduled for July 23rd.
Sir, could you people please kind of keep moving towards the exit and keep your conversations out there so we can finish the meeting? Thank you.
So just to reset, we issued the notice of preparation for the general plan EIR on July 1st. That's out for a 30-day review period. And we're going to have a public scoping meeting here in the council chambers on July 23rd at 6 p.m. That'll provide any interested members of the community an opportunity to provide comments on the scope of the environmental impact report to staff and the consultant before we initiate the draft of the EIR. We're also going to go before the City Council again next week on July 25th to give a presentation of the general plan budget. Following that, I'm going to bring a report to update the Commission on August 8th to kind of give you the status of where we've been, some of the council direction that's been received over the last couple of months. And with that, I'll conclude the director's report.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Any communications from any of the commissioners? Seeing none. Got through this meeting a lot faster than I thought we were going to. The meeting is adjourned.
muscle and bone, and all they care about is food. I mean, who would think that a goat would take up with a blind horse and spend years doing nothing except babysitting this animal just because he needed help? These guys have so much more to them than we give them credit for. We buried Charlie in a spot in the woods under the trees where they used to hang out. And you could go there in the afternoon and Charlie would be grazing and Jack would be laying in the sun, and that's where we put Charlie, and soon Jack will join his friend right there.
I think grieving, you know, when you lose a friend, it's a form of separation distress. There's some brand new research that shows that physiologically the pain circuits actually get involved in emotional pain. There's been brain scan studies where they've put people in scanners and show them pictures of departed loved ones, and the pain circuits are turning on.
We are interested in what they perceive, at least when it comes to death. So we've designed an experiment where I show monkeys pictures of the faces of other monkeys.
Monkey look left? Look right?
On one side of the apparatus,